AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she's marrying the guy who tried to assault me years ago. I, 29M, have a sister, Sarah, 27F, who's always been a bit dramatic. Growing up, she was always the center of attention, and I was the quiet, weird one who just wanted to stay out of the spotlight. I guess that's why, when she started dating Jake, 31M, about 6 years ago, I didn't think much of it. He was charming, outgoing, and fit right in with her, while I stayed out of their relationship. But there's a lot more to that story that I didn't even realize until later. So, when I was about 22, I went through a difficult period in my life. I had a bad breakup with a long-term girlfriend, and I was really down in the dumps. I started drinking a little more than usual and partying with friends to escape. One night, I was at a party at my best friend's place, and Jake was there too. At the time, I didn't know much about him. He was just Sarah's boyfriend's friend to me. I had a few too many drinks and ended up in a room with Jake. From what I remember, he started getting overly touchy with me, trying to get me to do things I wasn't comfortable with. I asked him to stop several times, and I think I pushed him away once or twice, but I was too drunk to fight back properly. When I finally gathered enough strength to leave the room, I stumbled out and found my friend to drive me home. I was incredibly shaken up, but I brushed it off as a weird incident because I thought maybe I had just been too drunk to realize what was happening, or maybe I had misinterpreted things. Still, the whole situation left me uncomfortable around Jake, and I distanced myself from him without saying anything to Sarah. A few weeks later, I overheard Sarah talking to a friend about her relationship with Jake, and she mentioned that he had been trying to push her boundaries sexually as well. I didn't confront her about it because I didn't want to get involved, but I did make a mental note of it. After that, I heard a few more things about Jake, not from Sarah directly, but from mutual friends, about his history with women, his temper, and how he would try to control them in relationships. None of this sounded good, and I started distancing myself even more from the whole situation. Years passed, and I tried to move on from the incident with Jake. I stayed out of Sarah and Jake's relationship as much as I could, only hanging out in group settings where I wouldn't have to interact with him one-on-one. I didn't want to cause drama, and I didn't think anyone would believe me if I told them about the night we had together. Jake was always charming, and no one really saw his darker side unless they were involved with him personally. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah called me about a month ago to tell me that she was getting married to Jake. She seemed really excited, and I could tell she was expecting me to be happy for her. I tried to sound supportive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong with her marrying him. I didn't say anything to her at that moment, but I started to feel more and more uneasy as the wedding date drew closer. I thought long and hard about what to do, and ultimately, I decided I couldn't attend her wedding. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine when I knew the truth about Jake and what he did to me, and possibly to others. I felt like it was my responsibility to protect myself, and my relationship with Sarah would be more important to me than any wedding day. A few days ago, I told Sarah that I wouldn't be attending her wedding. I told her the truth, that I had an incident with Jake years ago, and I felt extremely uncomfortable around him. I didn't go into full detail, but I told her I couldn't support their marriage because of his actions. Sarah was furious. She accused me of trying to ruin her happiness, and that I was just jealous because she was getting married and I wasn't. She said I was acting childish, and that I should have let the past go. She insisted that Jake had changed and that I was just holding on to old grudges. She also said I was making it all about myself and not thinking about her big day. I tried to explain that this was not about me being jealous or petty, but that I simply couldn't pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. She kept cutting me off, saying I was being unfair to her. At this point, I just gave up, and the conversation ended with her saying I'd ruined our relationship. Our parents got involved, and they're on her side. They've told me that I'm being unreasonable and that I should just let the past go for her sake. They even went so far as to say that if I didn't show up to the wedding, I'd be making a permanent rift between me and Sarah. My mom cried on the phone and begged me to reconsider, but I just feel like I can't. It's not just about a wedding. It's about standing up for what I know is right. Now, I'm feeling pretty conflicted. On the one hand, I don't want to lose my sister, but on the other hand, I can't pretend that everything is okay with Jake. I've even considered going to the wedding just to keep the peace, but every time I think about it, I feel like I'd be betraying myself and my values. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she's marrying the guy who tried to assault me years ago? Should I just let it go for the sake of family peace, or am I right to stand my ground? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in after she kicked her boyfriend out for cheating. So a bit of context. I, 29F, live alone in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a relatively expensive city. I've lived here for about 3 years now, and it's the first place I've ever had that I'm truly comfortable in. I've always been independent, and I value my space, especially since I work from home and don't get much downtime away from my laptop. I have a younger sister, Lily, 24F. We've always been close growing up, though there's a bit of an age gap, and we've had our fair share of ups and downs. She's been through a lot in the past couple of years. She ended a long-term relationship with a guy she thought she'd marry, went through a rough patch with her mental health, and then started dating this new guy, Jason, about 6 months ago. I had mixed feelings about Jason from the start. He seemed nice enough, but I had a gut feeling that he wasn't the right fit for her. He was a bit immature, couldn't keep a job for more than a couple of months, and had a reputation for being a little shady with money. Lily was smitten, though, and even when I expressed concerns, she brushed me off. I didn't want to push too hard, so I stayed quiet and let her figure things out. A couple of weeks ago, I got a phone call from Lily, and she was absolutely distraught. Apparently, Jason had been cheating on her for the last month with some woman he met online. Lily had kicked him out, and now she was in a bad spot. She didn't have anywhere to stay, and she had no idea what to do. She called me and asked if she could stay at my place. She said she needed some time to heal and get back on her feet. I knew she was upset, and I wanted to be there for her, but my first instinct was to say no. I'm not a cold person, but my apartment is really small, and I'm not used to having anyone else around. I also have a very specific routine that helps me manage my work-life balance. Having someone else in my space for an indefinite amount of time just isn't something I'm comfortable with. I told her I'd help her find other options, like looking into temporary rentals or seeing if she could crash with any of her other friends, but I didn't feel comfortable having her move in with me. She was understandably hurt and upset by this, but I didn't back down. A few days later, I got another call from her, and this time, she was much more upset. She told me that I was being selfish and that it wasn't about my comfort. It was about family. She said she would never do this to me if I were in her shoes, and I should be more supportive. I tried explaining that I didn't have the space, and that it would just make things more stressful for me, but she couldn't understand why I wasn't willing to help her. At this point, she told me that I was being heartless and accused me of not caring about her. She reminded me of all the times she had been there for me when I was struggling, and how I owed it to her to at least offer her a place to stay while she got back on her feet. I felt torn. Part of me genuinely wanted to help her, but the other part of me was overwhelmed with the idea of giving up my personal space for an extended period of time. I know it sounds harsh, but I didn't want to disrupt my life in such a significant way for something that could take months to resolve. A couple of days passed, and I saw on social media that Lily had posted a passive-aggressive message about me, hinting that I had let her down in her time of need. That really stung. I messaged her and asked what she meant by it, and she accused me of betraying her. I explained again that I wasn't trying to hurt her, but that I just didn't have the room, and that it wasn't fair for her to put that kind of pressure on me. To make things worse, our parents got involved. They called me and essentially begged me to let her stay, saying that it wasn't about the space. It was about showing Lily that she could rely on me, especially after what she had been through with Jason. I told them that I would be happy to help in other ways, like helping her find an apartment or putting her in touch with a therapist, but they didn't seem to understand my point of view. My mom was really disappointed in me, and I could tell that she was trying to guilt-trip me into changing my mind. She said I was being unreasonable and that family should come first, no matter what. But I just felt like my boundaries were being completely disregarded, and I didn't want to let myself get overwhelmed just to avoid conflict. Now, my sister isn't speaking to me, and neither is my mom. Our relationship is really strained, and I feel like I've been painted as the bad guy in all of this. I've been asking myself if I was too harsh, but at the same time, I think my feelings are valid. I've worked hard to create a space that works for me, and I'm not sure I should have to completely uproot that to accommodate someone else, especially when there are other options available. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in after she kicked her boyfriend out for cheating. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she disinvited me because I wouldn't support her dream wedding. So a bit of context. I'm 29 and my sister, Jess, is 26. We've always had a somewhat strained relationship. Growing up, I was the responsible one, and she was the more, let's say, free-spirited one. I was always the one helping out with the family business, managing things when our parents couldn't, and even stepping in when she'd get into trouble. I never minded it much, but it was clear that I was the dependable one, and Jess was the one who followed her whims without thinking much about the consequences. Fast forward to when Jess got engaged to her now fiancé, Adam. I was excited for her at first, even though I knew Jess had a tendency to overcomplicate things and wanted everything to be perfect, no matter the cost. But then, things started to take a weird turn when she started planning the wedding. She announced that she wanted a wedding that would blow everyone away and set the bar for what a wedding should be. I get it. Weddings are a big deal, but Jess's expectations were, well, unrealistic. First, she started with the venue. She wanted a destination wedding at a luxury resort overseas, and she expected all guests to fly out there and cover their own expenses. I don't know if any of you have priced out international flights and accommodations recently, but this was not an affordable wedding for most people. The ideal guest list was over 200 people, which included everyone from distant cousins to childhood friends she hadn't spoken to in years. I had a conversation with her about it, telling her that while I understand her desire for a beautiful wedding, this was going to be financially out of reach for many of the people she invited, including me. At the time, I wasn't in the best financial place. I was still paying off some debt from when I went through a rough patch a few years ago. I wasn't asking for a cheap wedding by any means, but I suggested we maybe look at venues that were more budget-friendly and that didn't require international travel for everyone. She wasn't having it. She insisted that if people truly cared about her, they would make it work, and I shouldn't be so negative about the wedding. Over the next few months, I continued to voice concerns about the costs, not just for me, but for other people in the family as well. I offered other alternatives, but Jess was adamant that this was her dream, and if anyone didn't want to support it, that it didn't have to come. I started feeling like she was just being unreasonable. I don't mind spending money on important events, but the sheer arrogance in how she expected people to just drop thousands of dollars to attend her wedding was baffling. I spoke with a few other family members who felt the same way, but no one wanted to speak up against her because she'd already made it clear she would not tolerate any negativity about her wedding plans. Then came the bridal party drama. Jess asked me to be her maid of honor, which I accepted because despite our differences, I thought this was an important moment for her, and I wanted to be there for her. But things started getting weird again when she gave me a list of responsibilities. The duties included planning an extravagant bachelorette party, which she insisted had to take place in Ibiza, again, a place most of us couldn't afford to fly to, and buying a custom-designed dress that was way outside my budget. The dress alone was $2,000, and when I explained I couldn't afford it, she basically told me I was being selfish and ruining the vibe of her wedding. I felt stuck. I wanted to be supportive, but I also didn't want to go bankrupt trying to please her. Eventually, the financial pressure, combined with her increasingly demanding attitude, led me to a breaking point. I pulled out of the bridal party. I told her I would still attend the wedding if it was closer to home, but I just couldn't afford to be part of the bridal party at all. She flipped out. She accused me of not caring about her and of being selfish and unsupportive. She also said I was trying to ruin her big day by not agreeing to her demands. At this point, I started to seriously question whether I even wanted to attend the wedding at all. The whole situation had become about what she wanted, and it felt like no one, especially me, was allowed to have a voice. After that, the communication between us started to break down. Jess began telling other family members that I was ruining her wedding and wasn't willing to support her dreams. Then, a few weeks before the wedding, I got an official message from Jess telling me that I was no longer invited to the wedding. She claimed that since I couldn't support her dream wedding, I was too negative and not a good fit for a celebration. She said that it would be better for everyone if I just didn't come. This hurt a lot. I had always been there for her in the past, but now, because I wasn't willing to empty my savings just to meet her extravagant standards, I was cut out. She even went as far as to tell our parents that if I didn't support her vision, I could sit this one out. So, to make things clear, I didn't just drop out of her wedding because I didn't want to be part of it. I did it because her behavior was completely out of line, and she was expecting everyone to sacrifice their financial well-being for her perfect day. And then, when I finally stood up for myself, she disinvited me completely. Now, my family is divided. Some are on Jess's side, saying I should have just sucked it up and supported her, while others are on my side, pointing out that she was being unreasonable. I'm feeling really hurt by the whole situation. I understand it's her wedding, and she should be allowed to have the wedding of her dreams, but this felt like an over-the-top demand, and now it seems like I'm being painted as the bad guy for not giving in to her. AITA for refusing to pay for her wedding or for even attending at this point. Should I have just gone along with it and dealt with the financial strain to keep the peace? Or is she being unreasonable for cutting me out over this? AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my apartment after she lost her job and got kicked out? So, here's the situation. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I've lived in my one-bedroom apartment for the past 3 years. I love my space. It's small, but it's mine. I work in marketing, and while my salary isn't extraordinary, I'm able to cover rent, utilities, and my basic needs with a little left over for myself. I don't have roommates, and I've been pretty protective of my alone time. I've built a routine that works for me, and my apartment has always been my sanctuary. My sister, Emily, 24, has been going through a rough patch lately. She's always been a bit of a free spirit, which I admire in some ways, but it's also caused her a lot of instability in her life. She's worked a variety of low-paying, part-time jobs and has had a hard time keeping a steady career. She's lived in a few different places over the past few years, but nothing really stuck. She has a history of bouncing from one place to another, and I think she just has a difficult time finding her footing. She's also been in and out of relationships, and those haven't helped her situation either. She's a great person, but she doesn't always make the best decisions when it comes to her future. A couple of months ago, Emily lost her most recent job. She was working as a barista at a local cafe, but the place went under and she got laid off. I wasn't thrilled about her job situation because it's not the first time this has happened, but I try to be supportive. I told her to start looking for something else, and I offered to help with her resume and job search. I also suggested she look for some better opportunities, maybe something that could give her more stability and benefits. But she didn't take my advice seriously. She ended up spending most of her time on self-care instead of job hunting, and after a few weeks, she still hadn't found anything. Last week, Emily called me crying. She said she'd been kicked out of the apartment she was renting with a few roommates because they decided to go in a different direction with their living situation. Apparently, they weren't happy with how things were going, and when Emily couldn't pay her share of the rent after losing her job, they gave her an ultimatum: either pay up or leave. She couldn't pay, and they kicked her out. I was immediately concerned, but I also felt a little frustrated. I've been trying to be patient with her, but I know she tends to ignore practical advice and live in the moment, which often leads to consequences like this. Still, she was family, and I didn't want her to be homeless. She asked if she could stay with me for a while, saying she'd only need a couple of weeks to get back on her feet. I wasn't thrilled by the idea, but I didn't want to say no outright. I've always told her I'd be there for her in tough times, so I thought, okay, I'll let her crash here for a bit. I can't turn my back on her. I told her she could stay for a week at most, just to help her out while she figured things out. But I made it clear that I needed my space back, and I didn't want this to turn into something permanent. I also told her she'd need to pitch in for some basic costs, like food and utilities, because my budget is tight and I don't have the extra resources to cover someone else for an extended period of time. She seemed grateful at first, and everything was fine for the first few days. She mostly kept to herself and spent time applying for jobs, but after a week, she hadn't found anything, and she started getting more comfortable. She was leaving her things around the apartment, using my kitchen without asking, and even spending entire days in my living room watching TV, which was fine at first but started feeling intrusive. I was starting to get annoyed, but I kept quiet, hoping she'd find something soon so she could move out. Then, about 10 days in, she told me she wasn't ready to leave yet. She hadn't found a job, and she didn't have anywhere else to go. I tried to be understanding, but I also needed her to respect my space. I told her again that she couldn't stay indefinitely, and I set a hard deadline. She needed to leave by the end of the month, no exceptions. She was upset, but I thought it was fair. I wasn't asking for much, just for her to respect my space and have a plan. A few days later, she pulled me aside and told me she had something to confess. Apparently, she had stopped looking for work entirely and had instead been spending the days at home, focusing on herself. She admitted that she was struggling with her mental health and that she didn't know what to do next. She said she was scared of not finding a job and that it felt easier to stay in a comfortable space and pretend everything was fine. I felt bad for her. Mental health is tough, and I knew how much pressure she put on herself, but I also didn't want to be her crutch forever. I tried to encourage her to keep applying and maybe look into therapy or counseling to help with her anxiety. But I also told her she couldn't stay here indefinitely. My patience was running thin. The more she stayed, the harder it became for me to keep my routine. I could barely focus at work, and I started feeling like I couldn't relax in my own home anymore. Finally, the end of the month came, and I told her again that she had to leave. She broke down in tears, saying that she didn't have anywhere else to go, and she begged me not to kick her out. She was sobbing, saying she didn't want to go back to her parents' house because it felt like a failure, and that she couldn't stand the idea of being judged. She told me that if I kicked her out, she would feel like I was abandoning her, and that she'd never be able to trust me again. I felt guilty, but I also knew I couldn't keep sacrificing my own well-being to accommodate her. I told her that she needed to figure things out, and that if she didn't have a plan, she'd have to return to her parents for now. She stormed out of the apartment, and since then, we haven't spoken much. My parents called me and told me I was being too harsh, that she needed my support right now, and that I was being selfish. Now I'm questioning whether I was too hard on her. She's my sister, and I love her, but I also can't let her take advantage of my hospitality. AITA for insisting she leave, even though she's struggling. AITA for telling my sister I won't be her bridesmaid after she asked me to lose 50 pounds. I, 28F, have an older sister, Emily, 33F. We've always been close, but also had our differences growing up. She's a very outgoing person, always been the center of attention, and she loves to make everything in her life as perfect as possible. I guess that's just who she is, but it's never really bothered me. We're family, and I love her, but we don't always see eye to eye. Recently, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Greg, 34M, and they started planning their wedding. From the beginning, Emily made it clear that her wedding was going to be a big deal, an extravagant fairy tale kind of event. She's been planning every little detail meticulously, which, again, is totally her style. The wedding is still about 6 months away, but she's already chosen her bridesmaids and made sure to give us all very specific instructions about what she expects. I'm not the type of person who gets overly excited about weddings. I think they're nice, but the attention to detail and all the stress that comes with them has never been my thing. So when Emily asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, I was honored, but I wasn't exactly thrilled about all the expectations that came with it. She wanted us all to be in perfect shape, have our hair and makeup done professionally, and wear the most expensive dresses. Honestly, it felt like a bit much, but I went along with it because she's my sister and I wanted to support her on her special day. Things started to go downhill when Emily mentioned that she wanted everyone in the wedding party to be at their best physical appearance. She made a point to say that the dresses she had chosen were very fitted and that we needed to be at our ideal weight. in order to pull them off. I didn't think much of it at first, but then she began to make subtle comments about me needing to lose weight. I've always struggled with my weight. I'm 5 feet 6 inches and weigh about 220 pounds. I know I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I've always been confident in who I am and comfortable in my own skin. I've had some moments of wanting to lose weight for my own health, but I've never felt the need to do it to meet someone else's standards. One evening, a few weeks ago, Emily and I were sitting down at dinner with our parents when she casually brought up my weight again. She told me that I should really focus on getting in shape for the wedding, especially if I wanted to look my best on the big day. She said that she wanted her bridesmaids to look flawless and that it would make the wedding photos look a lot better. She even suggested I hire a personal trainer and a nutritionist, which I felt was a little over the top. At this point, I felt pretty uncomfortable but tried to brush it off. However, the next time we met, Emily dropped a bombshell. She asked me if I would be able to lose at least 50 pounds before the wedding. She said she was only trying to help and that it was really important to her that everyone looked amazing. I was stunned. I didn't know how to respond. I've never been asked to lose that much weight in such a short period of time, especially not by a family member. I was hurt. It felt like she was telling me that I wasn't good enough the way I am, and I couldn't understand why it was so important for her wedding to be so tied to everyone's physical appearance. I tried to explain to her that I wasn't comfortable with this. I told her I loved her, but I wasn't going to put myself through extreme measures to meet some arbitrary weight goal. I mentioned that it might not even be healthy to lose that much weight in such a short amount of time. I told her I would still be there for her on her big day, but that I couldn't be a bridesmaid if she expected me to make such drastic changes for the wedding. Emily didn't take it well. She immediately started crying, telling me that I was being selfish and that this was her dream wedding, and that I was ruining it by not supporting her. She said I was making it all about me and that I was just looking for excuses not to follow her wishes. She claimed that all the other bridesmaids were on board with losing weight, and I was the only one being difficult. She said she had always been there for me, and that I should be willing to do this for her because it was such an important day in her life. Our parents sided with Emily, saying that I should try harder to meet her expectations. They said I was being overly sensitive and that I should just go on a diet like everyone else. It felt like I was the only one standing up for myself. At that point, I felt so alienated that I just walked out of the room. I've never felt so unsupported by my family, especially when it came to something that I felt so strongly about. Now, Emily is furious with me, and we've barely spoken since. She's posted about it on social media, sharing how heartbroken she is that I'm letting her down on such an important occasion. I've tried to reach out to her to explain my feelings, but she's been completely shut off. It's like I'm the villain here for not being willing to sacrifice my body to meet her standards. I know this is her wedding day, but I don't think it should come at the expense of my own self-esteem or health. I've been trying to do what's best for me, and I don't think I should be expected to change myself for anyone else's vision of perfection. But now I'm starting to second-guess myself. Maybe I'm being too stubborn or unreasonable. So, AITA for telling my sister I won't be her bridesmaid after she asked me to lose 50 pounds? I, 28M, recently found out that my father passed away after a long battle with cancer. It wasn't a shock because he had been struggling for a while, but it was still a hard thing to process. I'm the oldest of 3 kids, my sister Emma, 32F, my younger brother Ryan, 24M, and myself. I wasn't super close to my dad growing up, but I still cared about him and wanted him to have peace at the end. Emma was the one who was always by his side. She took time off work to care for him, organized everything, and was basically the emotional rock of the family. Ryan and I helped out when we could, but it was mostly Emma. She even moved back into our parents' house to take care of him full-time. When my father died, we were all left to deal with the will. I didn't expect much because, frankly, my father and I weren't on great terms. He had always been distant with me, and we had some major disagreements before his passing. But to my surprise, when we read the will, I found that my father had left me the majority of his estate. He left a few things to Emma, but the house, the investments, and most of his savings were all given to me. Emma was devastated. I didn't understand why at first because, like I said, we weren't close, and I assumed my dad, didn't have the same connection with me as he did with Emma. It turns out that my father's reasoning was that Emma had already received so much from him in terms of time, support, and care during his illness. He believed she had a lot of emotional debt to him that could never really be repaid, so he left me the financial side of things. This came as a shock to me. It felt almost like a betrayal, considering how much she had sacrificed for him during his last years. After the will reading, Emma was upset, understandably. She asked me what I was going to do with everything, and if I would consider helping her with some of the medical bills that had piled up due to her own health problems. Emma has been struggling with some chronic conditions that have left her in a lot of pain and unable to work. She's been using her savings to cover the medical costs, but it hasn't been enough, and she's starting to fall behind. She begged me to give her some of the inheritance to help cover her bills. At first, I felt sympathy for her. She's been through a lot, and I know she's been struggling with her health for years. But then, something inside me just snapped. I started thinking about everything I had gone through with my father. Growing up, I felt abandoned. My dad always gave Emma special treatment. She was the one he turned to when he had problems, while I was left to fend for myself. I spent most of my life feeling like I didn't matter to him. When he got sick, I tried to be supportive, but Emma was already so deep into the caregiving role that there wasn't much I could do. I visited when I could, but I felt like I had nothing to offer, and my father never really showed any gratitude for the effort. So, to me, the inheritance felt like a long overdue acknowledgement that I had value too. I knew that Emma would need the money, but I also knew that if I gave her a significant portion of it, I would feel like I was sacrificing my own well-being again. I've spent years feeling invisible in the family, and now that I had the chance to change my life and secure my future, I wasn't ready to give it up. I told Emma that I wasn't going to help her financially and that I intended to keep the inheritance for myself. She was furious. She said I was being selfish and that I should be helping her, since she was the one who actually took care of our father and had to deal with his illness firsthand. She also said that without the money, she might have to sell her house and move into a cheaper place, which would only make her health worse. This caused a huge argument. Ryan sided with Emma, saying that I should be more understanding and help her out. He said that the inheritance wasn't just mine to keep, especially since Emma had given up so much to care for our father. I tried to explain that the money was just my father's way of acknowledging my efforts too, even if they weren't as obvious as Emma's. I told them that I didn't owe them anything, especially after all the years of feeling like I didn't matter to my father. Emma is still angry, and the tension between us is really thick. We haven't spoken much since the argument, and every time we do, it turns into a fight. My parents' side of the family is also upset with me for not helping Emma, but I still feel like I have every right to keep the inheritance. I get it, she's been through a lot, but I've been through a lot too. I've had to fight for recognition in my own family, and I don't feel like I should have to give up my inheritance to fix that. I've been wondering if I'm being too harsh, or if I'm justified in not wanting to share my inheritance. AITA for refusing to give my sister the money, even though she needs it for medical bills. AITA for not letting my best friend's boyfriend move into my apartment after he got kicked out. I, 28F, have a best friend, Sarah, 29F, who I've known since college. We've always been close, and I consider her family. A couple of months ago, Sarah started dating a guy, Mark, 30M, who seemed nice at first. He's charming, funny, and they were happy together, or so it seemed. However, recently, their relationship hit a rocky patch. It all started when Sarah told me that Mark had gotten into an argument with his landlord and ended up getting kicked out of his apartment. She mentioned that Mark didn't have enough money saved up for a new place and didn't know where he was going to stay. I could tell Sarah was worried, and she asked if I would let Mark stay with me temporarily until he found a new place. I've always been a good friend to Sarah, and I hate to see her stressed out. So, without thinking much of it, I agreed. At first, it was only supposed to be a couple of days, but that turned into a week, then 2 weeks, and eventually a month. I've never had anyone live with me outside of my family, and I quickly realized that I'm not great at sharing my space. I'm a bit of a homebody, and my apartment is my sanctuary. Mark is nice enough, but having him around all the time was starting to wear on me. He would leave his things all over the place, play his music loudly at odd hours, and make himself too comfortable in spaces where I needed my peace. A few weeks in, Mark started making little comments about how he was planning to move his stuff in permanently, and how it was so much cheaper for him to live with me than to rent a place on his own. I didn't want to sound rude, but I didn't sign up for a long-term roommate situation. So, I gently reminded him that this was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. He seemed a little taken aback, but said he understood. The tipping point came last weekend. Sarah had come over to visit me, and while she was here, Mark kept texting her nonstop. At one point, he even called her in front of me, asking where she was and when she would be home. It made me uncomfortable. I'm not sure why, but it felt like I was being put in the middle of their relationship drama, and I didn't want to be. I also started feeling like Sarah had been more distant with me since Mark had moved in, and she was spending a lot of time at my place with him rather than going to her own apartment. A few days ago, Mark finally told me he had nowhere to go yet and that he didn't think he'd be able to find a place in time. I wasn't sure what to say, but I didn't want to live with him anymore. My apartment is small, and having someone else there all the time was starting to affect my mental health. I've been feeling exhausted, stressed, and my own routine was all over the place. I just didn't feel like I could relax in my own home anymore. So, I told Sarah that I needed Mark to find somewhere else to stay. I explained that I didn't want to kick him out, but it was starting to take a toll on me. I offered to help him look for apartments and offered to let him crash on my couch for a couple more days while he figured things out, but I said I couldn't keep him in my apartment long term. When I told Sarah, she didn't take it well. She started crying and said that I was being unreasonable. She said I was being too hard on Mark, especially since he had nowhere else to go. She also mentioned that if I truly cared about her, I would be willing to make sacrifices and help her out by being more accommodating. She said she couldn't believe I would kick her boyfriend out when he had no other options, especially since she had always been there for me. She accused me of not understanding how hard things were for her and Mark, and that I was being selfish. I feel bad, I really do. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like my needs are being completely disregarded. I've helped her countless times over the years, and I've always been supportive of her relationships. But this situation has started affecting my life and my peace of mind. I don't know what else I could have done to make it clear that I just can't live with Mark anymore. Sarah and I haven't spoken much since then. She's still upset, and I'm feeling torn. I know she's probably feeling a lot of pressure and stress right now, but I don't think that means I should have to sacrifice my comfort and mental health for her relationship. AITA for telling my best friend that her boyfriend can't stay with me anymore? Should I have been more understanding, or did I do the right thing? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she disinvited me? So this whole situation has been causing a lot of drama in my family, and I'm seriously questioning if I did the wrong thing here. So I need to know if I'm the asshole or if my sister is being unreasonable. Here's the backstory. I, 28F, have a sister, let's call her Emma, 26F, who is getting married in a few months. Emma has always been a bit difficult. She's the kind of person who expects things to go her way and gets very upset if they don't. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family. She excelled in everything, and my parents always seemed to cater to her every need, while I, as the older sibling, was always kind of in the background. Now, Emma's wedding planning started off as a huge deal for her, which I totally understood. It's her big day, and I was happy for her at first. But here's where things started to get weird. She asked me to be her maid of honor, which I thought was a huge honor, and I said yes right away. Then she started throwing out these requests that I felt were way over the top. First, she insisted that I pay for my own dress, which seemed fine at first, but then she sent me a link to a dress that was $800. I was taken aback, especially because she mentioned it was non-negotiable. I make a decent living, but I don't have $800 to just throw around for a dress I'll wear once. I tried to explain that I could spend maybe half that amount, but she didn't like that answer at all. She got very snappy with me and told me, if you can't even afford this, maybe you shouldn't be in the wedding. I was pretty shocked, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I just took a deep breath and decided I'd find a way to make it work. Then about 2 months ago, she told me I needed to get my hair and makeup professionally done for the wedding. Not only that, but she gave me a very specific stylist she wanted me to go to, and I had to book it through her. I found out that the whole package was over $300. Again, I was a little confused. This was starting to feel less like a wedding and more like I was her personal assistant. I explained that I didn't think I could afford it and asked if it would be okay if I just did my own hair and makeup. She flipped out. I'm talking full-on meltdown. She screamed at me that if I wasn't going to follow her instructions, I shouldn't be in the wedding at all. I tried to tell her that I was happy to be part of the wedding, but I just wasn't comfortable with the financial burden she was placing on me. She didn't care. She told me I was being selfish and not prioritizing her special day. That's when I started getting a little frustrated. At this point, I was already feeling a lot of pressure, but things only got worse. A few weeks later, Emma told me she had rethought things and needed to have a serious conversation with me. She told me that since I seemed unwilling to make her wedding a priority, she didn't think it would be a good idea for me to be in the wedding anymore. She said she couldn't have someone standing by her side who wasn't fully committed to her day. I was completely blindsided. I had been looking forward to being there for her, but now I was suddenly being disinvited. She assured me I could still come as a guest, but honestly, after the way she treated me, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. My parents were upset, especially my mom, who had always wanted us to be close. I tried to stay calm, but I was heartbroken. Here's where I probably made my biggest mistake. When she told me I was disinvited, I told her that if she wasn't going to let me be part of the wedding, I wasn't going to contribute financially either. You see, she had been hinting at me, helping her out with some of the wedding costs. She mentioned that if I could contribute $2,000 toward the reception, it would help her a lot since her fiancé's family wasn't contributing as much. I told her that since she'd uninvited me, I wouldn't be paying for anything. This set off a massive storm. She called me crying, asking me why I was being so cruel and heartless. My dad called me too, asking me why I wasn't just going to help my sister out. He said that families should come together to support each other, and I should just let the little things go for her big day. I told him I felt like she was treating me like a walking wallet and that I didn't want to be a part of it. My dad said that I was being dramatic and that I should just suck it up for one day. I ended up telling Emma I wouldn't attend the wedding at all unless she apologized and invited me back into the bridal party, but she refused. She said she was done with the drama, and if I couldn't accept things as they were, there was no point in having further conversations. Now, the family is split. My mom says I should have just given in to keep the peace, but my dad thinks Emma went too far and that she's the one being unreasonable. Other relatives have chimed in, and it feels like I'm being painted as the bad guy here. I know I should probably let it go, but I feel like I'm standing my ground for a reason. I'm not sure if I'm being too hard on her or if she really is being selfish and entitled. So, AITA? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law live with us after her divorce, even though my wife wants to help her. I, 30M, have been married to my wife, Emma, 28F, for 5 years. We have a pretty solid relationship, though we've had our bumps along the way. One of the biggest points of tension in our marriage comes from Emma's relationship with her family, particularly her sister, Rachel, 32F. Rachel and I have always had a rocky relationship. It's not that I hate her or anything, but she's always been a bit of a free spirit, doesn't keep a steady job, has lived in several different places in the past few years, and generally doesn't have a lot of responsibility. To give some context, Rachel and Emma grew up with a single mother, who was often absent or emotionally distant, so Emma took on a lot of the parental role in their household. Emma's always felt a bit responsible for Rachel, like she needs to look after her. Rachel, on the other hand, has never really felt that sense of responsibility, and for as long as I've known her, she's been a little chaotic in her personal life. Last month, Rachel announced that she was getting a divorce. She was married to a guy for about 3 years, and I guess the relationship just fell apart. Rachel came to Emma in tears, and naturally, Emma wanted to help her sister through this tough time. This is where things get tricky. Emma and I own a house together, and while we've had some space issues before, we've made it work. We have a guest bedroom, but it's not very large. Emma immediately offered for Rachel to come live with us for as long as she needs to get back on her feet. I have no problem with helping family, but I have some reservations about Rachel staying with us long term. For one, Rachel is not the most considerate person when it comes to living with others. When she was younger, she lived with Emma for a while, and it was a constant struggle. Rachel would leave her stuff everywhere, eat all the food, never pitch in for bills or rent, and generally just had a very laid-back attitude towards responsibility. Emma would always clean up after her, and while I tried to step in, it didn't make much of a difference. On top of that, Rachel's relationships have often been a roller coaster. She jumps into things quickly and has a tendency to get involved with people who are, frankly, not great. I worry that if she lives with us, I'll end up dealing with her chaotic lifestyle and her emotional baggage. I try to voice my concerns to Emma. I told her that I'm not comfortable with Rachel living here for an extended period of time. I suggested that Rachel could stay with her parents or find a short-term rental until she figured things out. Emma got really upset and accused me of not caring about her sister. She said I was being selfish and that family should always stick together, especially during tough times. I explained that I'm not saying I don't want to help, but I don't think it's a good idea for Rachel to move in. I told Emma that it could strain our marriage, especially if I'm stuck dealing with Rachel's mess again. I even said I was willing to help Rachel in other ways, financially, helping her find a place, or just offering emotional support. But living in our house long-term was a no-go. Emma said that I was being unreasonable and that I was putting my comfort over family. She accused me of not caring about her sister, and that hurt. I told her that I do care about Rachel, but I just don't think it's a good idea for her to move in. Emma got really angry, and we ended up having a huge argument about it. The argument has been going on for a few weeks now. I've tried to talk to Emma calmly, but she's still upset with me. She keeps saying I'm not being supportive and that she's disappointed in me. Rachel has also called me to tell me I'm being unsympathetic and that I'm not family-oriented. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle here. I don't want to be the villain in this situation, but I also don't want to deal with the chaos that comes with Rachel living in our home. I've tried to suggest other solutions, but Emma keeps bringing up how she wants to help her sister directly by offering her a place to stay. I know that Emma wants to be the hero for her sister, and I get that. But I feel like I'm being asked to sacrifice my peace of mind for something that I don't think will work. I don't want to come across as heartless, but I also don't want to end up resenting my wife or her sister if this turns into a bigger issue down the road. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law live with us after her divorce, even though my wife wants to help her. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she invited me as a last-minute guest. I, 29M, have a sister, Kayla, 33F, who has always been the golden child of the family. She's the oldest, the one who excelled at everything, the one who could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, have always felt like I was the underdog, unspectacular but hard-working. I didn't get much attention growing up because Kayla was always the center of everything. Despite all that, I've always tried to be supportive of her, even when it felt like my efforts went unnoticed. A few months ago, Kayla got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Mark. From the start, I knew their wedding was going to be big. She's always been the type to dream of a fairy tale wedding, and from what I gathered, her plans were extravagant. She sent out save the dates almost a year before the wedding, and it seemed like everything was going according to plan. I, however, never got an official invitation, so I assumed it wasn't going to happen for me. The wedding is about 2 weeks away now, and out of nowhere, I get a text from my sister asking if I can come. She explained that she had to cut down on the guest list and that I wasn't originally invited, but some people dropped out, and now there's room for me. It was strange, but I didn't think too much of it. She then sent a follow-up message saying that she would love for me to be there, but would need me to help with the cost for the meal and the venue. She explained that the venue was extremely expensive and that everyone chips in to make it happen. I'll admit, I was taken aback. I don't make a ton of money, and I've got a lot of personal expenses, but I've always done my best to help when it counts. I asked her what exactly I was being asked to contribute, and she mentioned that the cost of the meal was around $150 per person, and they were asking for $300 to cover my share, including some extras for the wedding party. Now, I don't have a problem with paying my way if I'm invited to an event, but this situation felt different. I wasn't even on the original guest list, and Kayla had never bothered to reach out until now. I tried to express this to her politely, saying that I didn't mind coming if she really wanted me there, but I felt uncomfortable with the idea of being asked to pay such a large amount when I was essentially an afterthought in her wedding plans. Her response was blunt. She told me I was being selfish and that the wedding was expensive, so everyone had to pitch in. She reminded me that this wasn't the first time she had helped me out with money. This was true. She had helped me with rent a few years ago when I was struggling, and that I should be able to return the favor. I felt pretty upset by that. She was asking me to pay a pretty significant amount of money to attend her wedding. Money I simply didn't have, and the way she phrased it made me feel like my worth in the family was based solely on financial contributions. I'm not going to lie, the whole thing really rubbed me the wrong way. I understand weddings are expensive, but it didn't sit right with me that she had already planned an extravagant event, excluding me from the guest list, and now wanted me to come and pay a high price to be a last-minute guest. In the end, I told her I wasn't comfortable paying for it, and I wouldn't be attending. She was furious. She said I was being disrespectful, and that I didn't care about her big day. Our parents got involved, and they've been telling me I'm being petty. They said I should just suck it up and pay the money to support my sister. It feels like everyone is turning against me, and it's been causing a lot of tension in the family. I'm starting to second-guess myself. Maybe I'm being too stubborn? Maybe I should just bite the bullet and pay the money to avoid more conflict. But at the same time, I really don't want to be made to feel like a backup guest just because there's room now, and I have no interest in helping to fund her over-the-top wedding, especially under these circumstances. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she invited me last minute. AITA for refusing to let my sister's family stay with me after she called me selfish for not helping her out financially. So a bit of context. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Rachel, 25F, who has had a rocky life. She's always been a bit irresponsible, I guess, but I try to be supportive, or at least I used to. In the past few years, she's been in and out of relationships, had some financial issues, and generally I've tried to help her when I could, whether it's with a loan, helping her find a job, or just giving her a place to stay. I know she's struggling, but I can't help but feel like it's always the same pattern. She'll get herself into a mess, ask for help, and then go back to the same destructive behavior. A couple of weeks ago, she called me out of the blue, asking if her and her husband, let's call him Ben, and their 2 kids, ages 3 and 5, could stay with me for a few weeks while they figure out their situation. Apparently, Ben had lost his job, and they were about to lose their apartment because they couldn't pay rent anymore. She didn't go into details, but it sounded like it was a combination of Ben not trying hard enough to find work and Rachel not managing her finances well, which had led them into this mess. I was immediately put off by the request. I love my sister and her kids, but I live in a small 1-bedroom apartment. I don't have a space for 4 people, especially with 2 young kids. And I knew that a few weeks could easily turn into several months, which is not something I was comfortable with, considering the fact that I barely have enough space for myself. I told Rachel that I wasn't able to take them in, and I suggested that she look into other options like finding a shelter or seeing if other family members could help. I also suggested she try applying for government assistance or rent relief programs, things that could help her in the short term. She got really upset, and the conversation escalated quickly. She accused me of being selfish and not caring about her or her kids. She said that I should be more supportive, especially since I'm doing well financially and don't have kids to worry about. I told her that I didn't think it was realistic for me to take in 4 people when I already struggle to make ends meet on my own, and that it wouldn't be good for any of us. She said that she'd never asked for help before, and that it hurt her that I was turning my back on her. After that, I tried to explain that it wasn't about not caring about her or her kids. It was about boundaries. I'm not in a position to play savior, and I don't think it's healthy for either of us to let this turn into a long-term arrangement. But she hung up on me, and now she hasn't been speaking to me for weeks. Here's where it gets even messy, eh? My mom, who has always been the fixer of the family, called me a few days ago, saying that I was being too harsh on Rachel. She told me that I need to help out more, that Rachel needs me right now, and that it's not the time to be selfish. She said that I should just find a way to make it work, and that family comes first. I feel really torn. On one hand, I get where my mom is coming from. Rachel is in a tough spot, and I do care about her and her kids. But on the other hand, I feel like I've been a doormat for her in the past. I've given her money when she needed it, helped her get a job interview, and let her crash at my place when she was between apartments. But it always feels like I'm just enabling her to keep making poor decisions, and I'm the one who ends up drained and resentful. I've tried talking to a few friends about it, and they all seem to agree with me that I can't just let her move in indefinitely, especially if it means sacrificing my own well-being. But my mom and Rachel keep making me feel like I'm the bad guy for not just giving in. I know my sister needs help, but I'm really struggling with this whole situation. It feels like every time I try to set boundaries with Rachel, she makes me feel like I'm being cruel and heartless. I just don't know what to do anymore. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her family stay with me, even though she's struggling financially and could really use the support. AITA for telling my sister I won't attend her wedding if she invites our estranged mother. I, 29F, have a pretty complicated relationship with my family. To make it simple, I have a mom, 50s, a sister, 27F, and a dad, 50s, though I don't really have a relationship with my mom anymore. To give some context, my mom and I have been estranged for the last 5 years, and the way it happened is honestly a mess. Growing up, I always had a rocky relationship with my mom. She was never abusive, but she was incredibly emotionally distant and often made me feel like I was never good enough. There was always this weird competition between me and my sister. It was like my mom always favored my sister, even though she was the younger one. I was expected to do everything right, get good grades, never make mistakes, always be perfect, while my sister seemed to get away with murder. I guess I started resenting it around my late teens and early 20s. The final straw, though, was when I was 24. My sister, who was 22 at the time, got engaged to her now fiancé. Let's call him Mark. The engagement came out of nowhere. She'd been dating him for only 6 months, but they seemed to be getting serious quickly. I'm not really the one to judge others' relationships, but I didn't think they were ready for marriage. I brought it up to my mom just to voice some concern about how fast things were moving. She completely shut me down. She said I had no right to judge my sister, and that if I didn't support her, I'd regret it. At the engagement party, I was already uncomfortable. My sister's fiancé was nice enough, but he came from a very wealthy family, and my mom, being the classic status over everything person she is, was practically glowing in front of them. She wasn't even trying to hide it. She kept pointing out how amazing Mark's family was, how much money they had, how their wedding would be a dream because of their resources. It made me feel invisible. The entire night, I was just standing in the corner, not included in any conversations. I could feel the distance growing between me and everyone else. The following year, I got engaged to my now husband, Jacob, 30M. While my relationship wasn't as fast-paced as my sister's, it was real. We'd been dating for about 3 years by the time we got engaged, and we wanted a low-key wedding. I never expected my family to throw me a big extravagant celebration, but I was hoping for some kind of support, especially from my mom. That didn't happen. When I told her about the engagement, she was distant. She barely reacted, and when she did, it was only to ask about the wedding details. No congratulations, no warmth, just questions about when she could plan her outfit. I assumed she was just busy, but when it became clear that she wasn't going to be involved at all, I reached out to her and asked if we could talk. She agreed, and I tried to express how hurt I was by her lack of enthusiasm. That conversation was the beginning of the end. My mom told me that I was too emotional and that I was just looking for attention. She said I was always trying to make everything about me, even though I just wanted her to be involved in one of the most important moments of my life. We fought for hours, and I left the conversation feeling like I'd just been crushed by someone who was supposed to love me. A few months later, my mom sent me a text message saying that she didn't want to be part of my wedding because she didn't think it was right for her to be there if I wasn't going to accept things the way they are. I was hurt, but at that point, I didn't feel like I could fight for her love anymore. I sent a short reply, telling her that if that's how she felt, I wouldn't force her to come. I got married without her being there, and to be honest, it was a huge relief. In the years that followed, I made several attempts to reach out to my mom, but every time I did, it felt like she was only interested in controlling the situation. She would message me about how I need to get over this or move on, but I just couldn't forgive the way she treated me. By the time I hit 27, I realized that she was never going to change, and I stopped trying to fix things. I focused on my relationship with my dad and sister, even though my dad was never very vocal about the whole thing. Fast forward to this year. My sister is getting married. She and Mark have been together for about 5 years now, and it seems like their relationship is a lot stronger than it was at the beginning. I'll admit, I was a little bitter at first, but I genuinely wish her the best. The wedding planning has been a bit of circus, though, especially because my mom is all over it. She's been sending my sister wedding dress ideas, picking out decorations, and generally taking over. It's clear that my sister wants her to be heavily involved, and I can see how much it means to my mom to be the center of attention again. Here's where I'm stuck. A few weeks ago, my sister sat me down to talk. She told me that their wedding would be incomplete without me, and that she wanted me there. But she also told me that my mom would be invited, and that I should let go of the past. She said that she didn't want there to be any tension at her wedding, and that I should be the bigger person. Now, I get where she's coming from. It's her wedding, and she wants everything to go smoothly. But I couldn't bring myself to agree. I told my sister that I wouldn't be attending her wedding if my mom was invited. I said that I was tired of being the one who has to make all the compromises and be the bigger person when she's the one who's been emotionally neglectful and toxic for years. My sister was visibly upset and said that I was making everything about me, but I couldn't back down. The conversation got heated, and I ended up telling her that if she couldn't understand why I felt the way I do, then I didn't think I could support her wedding the way she wanted. My sister hasn't spoken to me much since, and now I'm wondering if I've crossed a line. I feel like I've been clear about my boundaries, but maybe I've just hurt her in the process. So, AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding if my mom is invited? I feel like I've given my family so many chances, and at this point, I don't owe anyone anything. But maybe I'm being too harsh. AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding because she didn't invite my partner? So here's the deal. I've, 28F, been best friends with Rachel, 29F, for years. We met in college, roomed together for 2 years, and have been inseparable ever since. She's the type of person who would drop everything to help you out, and we've been through thick and thin together. I've always been there for her, especially through her relationship ups and downs. Now, Rachel is getting married to Jake, 32M. I had a feeling this day was coming soon since they've been together for about 5 years now. But as soon as she got engaged, things started getting weird. Let me give you some context about my partner, Emily, 30F. Emily and I have been together for 3 years now, and we're very much in love. We've been living together for almost 2 years, and I'd say our relationship is pretty solid. We've met each other's families, we travel together, and we support each other in every way. When Rachel told me she was engaged, I was ecstatic for her. I knew this was a huge deal for her, and of course, I wanted to be a part of the big day. I was looking forward to being there for my best friend on one of the most important days of her life. But then came a bombshell. Rachel told me that Emily wasn't invited to the wedding. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she hadn't gotten to sending out the plus ones yet, or maybe she was still working on a guest list. But no, Rachel was very clear. She told me that the wedding was going to be small, and it was a personal choice not to invite Emily. I was absolutely stunned. I thought maybe there was some sort of misunderstanding or miscommunication, but Rachel assured me that she had thought it through carefully. She said Emily and I had been dating for only 3 years, and she felt like it wouldn't be right to invite her to such a personal event, especially since Emily wasn't someone she was close with. This caught me off guard for several reasons. First of all, Rachel had always been supportive of my relationship with Emily. She had met Emily multiple times. We'd hung out as a group with Rachel's fiancé, Jake, and everyone had gotten along fine. In fact, Emily had even helped Rachel out during a tough time a few years ago when Rachel's mom had fallen ill. They'd spend hours talking on the phone, and I thought they developed a decent rapport. But apparently, Rachel didn't feel that way anymore. She told me that Emily didn't fit the vibe of the wedding and that she didn't have a strong enough relationship with her to be invited. At this point, I was confused, hurt, and honestly pretty pissed off. I felt like Rachel was completely disregarding my partner in favor of some idea of what a perfect wedding should look like. I've been with Emily for years, and Rachel knew how important Emily was to me. So to hear her say that Emily wasn't invited and then make up this excuse about not having a strong relationship with her, it stung. And it was only made worse by the fact that she was still planning on inviting other people I barely knew, like some of her coworkers who'd only been a part of her life for a few months. I tried to explain how hurtful this was to Rachel. I told her that, as my best friend, she should be supporting my relationship, not making me choose between her and Emily. I even mentioned that I didn't feel comfortable attending the wedding if Emily wasn't invited. I was firm but tried to keep it respectful, explaining that this wasn't about her wedding being small or having a personal guest list. It was about her excluding someone who had been a part of my life for years. Rachel didn't take it well. She accused me of being selfish and said I was making her wedding about me. She told me I was being dramatic and that if I couldn't respect her wishes, then maybe I wasn't as good of a friend as I thought I was. She made it clear that this was her day and I needed to get over it and just attend the wedding without Emily if I truly cared about her. She said I was acting like a child and that this wasn't high school anymore. I felt completely blindsided by this. I had expected a little pushback, sure, but not this kind of reaction. I was trying to be understanding of her position, but it seemed like she wasn't even considering mine. After a lot of back and forth, I ended up telling Rachel that I couldn't go to the wedding if Emily wasn't invited. I told her it wasn't fair to put me in that position, and I wasn't willing to attend an event where my partner wasn't welcome. Rachel hasn't spoken to me since. She's posted a few things about her wedding planning on social media, but hasn't acknowledged me at all. I'm starting to feel like I've made a huge mistake, but I can't help feeling like I'm in the right here. I've been nothing but supportive of Rachel and her relationship with Jake, but I feel like she's totally disregarding mine. Am I the asshole for not attending her wedding? Should I just suck it up and go without Emily? Or am I justified in standing my ground? I really value my friendship with Rachel, but I also can't imagine spending my life with someone who doesn't respect my relationship. So, AITA for not attending my best friend's wedding because she didn't invite my partner? I, 27F, have an older sister, 32F, Rachel, who I've always had a complicated relationship with. We were close growing up, but as we got older, I started noticing a pattern. Rachel tends to be dishonest about a lot of things, especially when it comes to money and personal issues. I've tried to be patient and supportive, but over time, I've grown more skeptical of her. A few months ago, Rachel called me out of the blue asking if I could lend her $5,000. She claimed it was for an emergency, some unexpected medical bills that she couldn't pay. She said that her insurance wasn't covering it, and she needed to get the money fast or else her doctors were going to stop treating her. I'm not loaded by any means, but I do have a decent job, and I've helped her financially in the past, though it was usually smaller amounts. But this was a big request, and I had to think about it carefully. I asked her to explain the situation in more detail, and she got really defensive and insisted that I just trust her because this was something urgent. I told her that I wasn't sure I could give her that much, but I would consider helping if she provided some sort of documentation, medical bills, insurance statements, anything to verify that this was real. She didn't take kindly to that request and told me that if I didn't trust her, then I wasn't a good sister. She said I was making her feel like she was lying and that I was basically accusing her of being dishonest. I didn't want to feel pressured into lending her that amount of money without knowing all the details, so I stood my ground. I told her that I needed proof before I made a decision. She got really upset and hung up on me. I thought that was the end of it, but she kept calling for the next few days, leaving angry messages saying I didn't care about her and that I was choosing money over family. She said that I was being unreasonable and that if our roles were reversed, she would never question me like this. Eventually, I decided to take a break from the situation. I wasn't sure if I could trust her, but I didn't want to lose my relationship with my sister over something like money, so I told her I needed some space. I didn't hear from her for about a week after that. Then, she called again, but this time, she sounded different. She apologized for getting so upset and said that she understood why I was being cautious, but she still really needed the money. She promised that this would be the last time she would ever ask for financial help. After thinking about it for a day or two, I decided to lend her the $5,000, with the condition that she would pay me back within 6 months, and that she would send me copies of all her medical documents like bills and insurance statements so I could see where the money was going. To my surprise, she agreed. I transferred the money, and for a couple of months, everything seemed fine. I didn't hear from her much, but I didn't think too much of it. Then, last week, I found out something that made me question everything. I ran into one of our mutual friends, Megan, and we started talking. Megan mentioned that she had seen Rachel at a party recently, and that Rachel had been talking about going on a luxury vacation to Europe with her boyfriend. I was shocked because I knew Rachel didn't have that kind of money, at least not after asking me for $5,000. Megan said that Rachel had been posting about it on social media, showing off her new clothes and expensive restaurants. Megan also mentioned that Rachel had bought a brand new car not long ago, and it looked like she had been spending a lot of money on things that weren't exactly essential given the emergency she claimed to have had. I was furious. I immediately went home and started checking Rachel's social media, which I hadn't done much since we talked. Sure enough, there were pictures of her at a 5-star hotel in Paris, and her stories were filled with shots of fancy cocktails and expensive dinners. There was even a post where she was smiling next to a new sports car. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe she had lied to me about needing the money for medical bills and had instead used it to fund a vacation and buy luxury items. I decided to confront her. I called her up and asked about the vacation, the car, and all the posts. She tried to brush it off at first, saying that she had used some savings for the trip and that the car was a long-term investment. I reminded her that she had told me she couldn't afford her medical bills, and that's why she needed the $5,000. And now it looked like she was spending money on things that weren't even remotely urgent. Rachel got defensive again and accused me of not understanding her situation. She said she was trying to enjoy life after everything she'd been through, and that she had to treat herself because she worked so hard. She said that I was making her feel guilty for doing things that made her happy. I told her that it wasn't about her happiness, but about the fact that she had lied to me to get money for something that wasn't even a real emergency. She then got really angry and told me that if I was going to accuse her of lying, then I wasn't the person she thought I was. She ended the conversation by saying she wouldn't be asking me for help again, and that I could consider our relationship finished. Now I feel stuck. I know I made the right call by refusing to just hand over the money without understanding the situation, and I feel like I was justified in asking for proof. But I also feel bad because I've lost my sister over it. I've tried to reach out a couple of times, but she's been ignoring me, and it seems like she's genuinely upset with me. Part of me feels like I should have just given her the benefit of the doubt, but the other part of me thinks she needs to face consequences for lying about something this serious. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister after she lied about her financial situation. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move into my house because of his behavior. So here's the deal. I, 29F, have a sister, Emily, 26F, who is engaged to Jake, 29M. They've been together for about 4 years now. I get along with Emily pretty well, but I've always had a strained relationship with Jake. I won't go into too much detail about why I don't like him, but it's mostly because of his behavior. He's always been kind of condescending and dismissive towards me, especially about my career and life choices. I'm an architect, and he's made a lot of comments about how I don't really work because I'm not a doctor or a lawyer. He has this thing where he looks down on anyone whose job doesn't seem prestigious to him. Anyway, recently, Emily and Jake started having some financial issues. They've been living in a small apartment that's become increasingly difficult to afford due to rising rent prices and, apparently, some overspending. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but it's none of my business. The point is, they've been talking about moving in with me temporarily until they can get back on their feet. At first, I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I wanted to be a good sister, so I agreed to help them out. I have a spacious house with plenty of room, and I thought it would be no big deal. But then Emily and Jake started laying out their expectations. They said they wanted to have full autonomy over the guest room, including decorating it however they wanted. They also mentioned wanting a separate fridge in the kitchen for their food, and Jake even asked if I would buy a new bed for them since the one in the guest room was too uncomfortable. This was before they'd even officially moved in, and I was already feeling a little put off by the level of entitlement they were showing. The breaking point came when Jake made a comment that rubbed me the wrong way. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book, and he came in, looked around, and said, "This place is fine, but it's kind of, well, basic. You should really think about getting a bigger TV. I mean, you're doing okay, right?" Now, I know he was trying to be casual, but I took it as a jab. I work hard for everything I have, and I didn't appreciate him implying that my choices were somehow subpar just because I don't have a mansion or the latest tech. The whole thing just felt patronizing. That night, I talked to Emily and told her that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of Jake moving in, especially after the comment he made. I explained that I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but I didn't think I could live with someone who constantly belittled me, and that Jake's entitled attitude wasn't something I could tolerate. Emily was really upset and said that I was being selfish, that they had nowhere else to go, and that I should be willing to help them out given how close we are. She said that Jake was just stressed about the situation and that I should cut him some slack. She also mentioned that if I didn't want to help them, then I should at least be supportive of their decision to make these changes to my house, because it's only temporary and they need to feel comfortable. I felt torn because I do love my sister and I do want to help her, but I also feel like I've been more than reasonable. It's one thing to open my home to them, but it's another to let them walk all over me and demand all these changes. I suggested that maybe they should look into other options, like renting a room somewhere or finding a cheaper place to stay, but Emily insisted that they just couldn't afford it right now. In the end, I stuck to my guns and told Emily that I wouldn't allow Jake to move in, at least not with his attitude. She ended up storming off, and we haven't spoken much since. I've tried reaching out, but she's not really responding. Our family has been pretty divided on the issue. Some people say I'm right to stand my ground, while others think I should just let them move in and stop making things so difficult. So, AITA for refusing to let Jake move in, or should I have been more understanding given their situation? I feel like I'm in the right, but the guilt is really starting to eat at me. I just can't shake the feeling that I'm being unreasonable. I don't know if I'm being overly sensitive about the comments he made, or if I have every right to draw a line here.